right, so I believe that I've referred to this as the Spreading War map tray, which might be a little confusing because we actually have another tray in addition to these, and this one is actually 2 trays, but it's the way I was referring to it as I was putting the thing together and designing it. So the first time or two that I put these together, even though I designed this, I was having a hard time keeping track of which of these pieces is which, because there are some that are very similar that, like these two right here, I guess that, let's see, no, these two, like these two right here, very similar, but as you can see, there are some slight differences in the lengths of the fingers, some of this length, but it's really hard to tell which one goes where. So after learning that I needed to do something else to make this easier and more foolproof, I've gone ahead and put these little symbols all around this thing, like that right there. And we've got matching symbols all along here. And so all you have to do is match up these matching symbols. And that will help you keep track of which part is for which set of tray, for which part is for which tray, and make sure that you have them all aligned in the correct way. And I might update these symbols just to make them a little bit more legible. Some of them are just fine the way they are. Some of them could probably be swapped out for something else. But here we go. So I've got a square, triangle, circle, X. Those are all simple. Some of the ones I did over here, I was running out of simple stuff. So right now it's an equal sign. Again, though, if you've got somewhat different looking symbols on here, don't worry. That just means that I've made things a little bit... That just means I've determined I needed to make things a little bit more clear visually. All right, so we've got matching symbols here, 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 and here. So now I need to go ahead and start gluing this thing together. And this can be, once again, a little tricky, although it's easier if you know exactly which parts are going where and you're not having to think through that as you do the assembly. As I usually do in these demo videos, I'm using Elmer's Craft Bond Tacky Glue. When I'm doing this sort of assembly for myself, not for a video, I often use Titebond translucent wood glue. However, that has a tip, an applicator tip, that is not meant for fine use. So you would have to transfer it into another container. And I want to keep these things as simple as possible so that all you'll really need to assemble any of this stuff is maybe a bunch of office clips, office binder clips, and I've got medium ones, small ones, and large ones. So having a pile of, maybe a dozen of each of those. Well, the large one's probably not a dozen, like, a dozen of the medium and small ones, and, maybe 6 of these is usually going to be quite helpful. All right, so the reason I like the Elmer's Craft Bond Tacky Glue is because it's tacky, which will help hold your piece together until you can actually get things bound correctly with clips or rubber bands or whatever. And sometimes you really need that help. And the other reason is it's got a relatively fine applicator tip there. So once I've got all that glue on there, I'm first going to start down here at this end because we have nice right angles. And so this kind of finger joint tends to, it's really ideal for right angles. The other angles that we've got over there, and I'm just going to put a little bit of extra here and here, just because these corners are a little bit unconventional, or those are, so I just want to get everything glued up nice and tight. So I'm going to go ahead and do these 2 corners over here, which are a little more conventional first. There we are. Let's see, a little bit more down there. A little bit there. All right. So that will go like this. Got a little too much glue there, but that's fine. You can just wipe that off. Now this one is the one that's a little tricky and took some real design work. So these, you'll notice this is a shorter finger sticking out here. This is a longer finger. That's because this is at an obtuse angle, this is at an acute angle, and so here you need longer fingers to go ahead and lock together. This one you have to have shorter ones. Now this does mean that it won't fit together naturally quite as tightly as a 90-degree angle finger joint or box joint. But that's why I'm going to go ahead and be a little more generous with the glue than I often am. I'd rather have a little bit of squeeze out that might need to be cleaned up or not cleaned up than have too little and have it not actually go together. So this corner here, you might need to play around with it a little bit. We sort of want this inner corner to really just sort of match up. So once we get this in, I'm then going to take some of my binder clips. Now, normally I would put rubber bands around this whole thing, but because of the weird angles we've got here and the fact that these are very short walls and we don't have many fingers here to sort of stabilize things as they go up, and we've got these, you know, obtuse and acute angles, I have found that just office binder clips like this to hold the four corners together and maybe one along the long edge can be a good idea. All right, there we are. If you see any separation along here, you could go ahead and put one more on just to keep this on the long axis here. Let me see. All right, so this is actually bowing a little bit. You can see a little bit of a gap right in there. I'll see what I can do about that in just a moment. All right, can this go here? Yeah. Now, if you do one of these along here, do be careful that this doesn't end up bending this piece either inward or outward a little bit. We want to make sure that that is not doing that. All right, so along here, there are a couple of things I could do. I could try to get a rubber band and kind of run it around here to pull this in, but I think what I can do, since I just see a little bit of a gap there, is just to pull this in, pull it in tight, and then while it's pulled in tight, I'll use a larger one. While it's pulled in tight, put that on, and then that should hold the thing in place a little better. All right. So as I said, usually I'm a little bit, you know, obsessive about trying to keep my glue from having squeeze out. But on this one, I don't really have a problem with it. I'd rather have a little bit of glue squeeze out on the corners and have it be nice and sturdy rather than have it look pretty and not be sturdy. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of extra glue in these corners, especially the non-right angle corners. All right, okay. So there we go with that. The other one works the same way. Again, we have the little symbols that we talked about earlier that are showing you which parts go where in what way. I'd originally tried designing this thing as just one L-shaped tray, but the assembly on that actually was more problematic than the assembly that we have here now. Essentially, when you've got an L-shaped tray, that means you have to have an interior angle as well as the exterior angles, right? So these are all exterior angles, but then when you go in like this, you've got an interior one, and trying to get that to bind up nicely when you're assembling things is kind of a pain, as I found. So I figured it would be simpler, even though it doesn't seem very simple, to do this instead. All right, so now those two map trays just need to cure, and then we can put them into the overall thing.